Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Cam. Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania is officially in theaters, and it's now time to talk about some spoilers. This is your spoiler warning. If you have not seen Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, click off of this video, go and see it if you would like to, and come back to this one when you know everything that happens in the movie. I have a spoiler-free video. It's going to be linked in the eye in the right-hand corner. Go check that out, knock yourself out. But this is a spoiler discussion. And to do it, I had to bring on someone who I have been wanting to collab with for a minute now. He is a great guy and he's got a great channel. It's Ryan from Realspective. Ryan, thank you so much for coming on.
Ryan, I think we're gonna have a issue here going back and forth with the Ryans. I love it, man. I love it. I To be fair, I don't think there'd be anyone else I want to talk about this movie with than you because, dude, I love it. I think me and you are gonna agree a lot more about this movie than I feel like I have with just anybody I've been talking about this movie with. So I'm really interested to see where like this conversation goes, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to get it out there, I gave it a good rating on my rating scale. I thought it was flawed in certainly places, but I think it was planting seeds for what we could see going forward in a positive sense. So definitely problems, but overall I liked it. So that'll be interesting to hash that out. But before we do that, tell everyone about you and your channel.
Oh yeah, guys, I run my own channel called Realspective. I mean, I like to keep it real, but also respective at the same time because I feel like that's the best form of conversation with anybody, especially now in the internet days where everyone just kind of hassles you if you don't agree with their opinion or viewpoint. And I just like talking to people that have the same views, are in the middle, might not have all the same, but maybe they do, or people that straight up disagree with me because I think that's just what the beauty of talking about movies is just getting every single perspective. And I think that's why, in particular, I like talking about Marvel movies because they're so divisive nowadays and way more divisive than I think the DCU movies have ever been, just in their own different way. It's really interesting. But yeah, I think I'm going to have my spoiler Ant-Man and the Wasp review with Amanda up in a few days on that.
Yeah, and I will put Ryan's channel linked in the description. Go give him a subscribe there. He's I've been itching to get him onto my channel for a while now, so this is going to be tons of fun. So without any further ado, I think we should just get into the movie. And I guess the biggest thing coming out of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is Kang the Conqueror. I mean, we had a variant of him in Loki, but we're supposedly getting Kang like the biggest version of him, played by Jonathan Majors. So shout out to him. He's clearly like after this in Creed 3, it's gonna be like, what's my schedule today? All right, 8:30, count my money. 9:30, count my money. So congratulations to him. And he really, in terms of performance wise, is the best part of the movie by a significant distance. However, the more I've thought about it and I've gotten some time to kind of marinate it and think it over in my head, I think Kang kind of went out like a bit of a chump, if we're really thinking about it. Like, not to mention the rebellion that rises up with the quantum realm people, but we got like the super smart ants that like Hank Pym controls, and just I'm just sitting there in the theater thinking to myself, you've killed several Avengers teams over, and yet you're getting taken out by ants. And even if
I
they're big
know,
ants, they're still ants. Like, come on now.
dude. I think that kind of just goes into like one of the bigger problems of the characteristics of this Kang is his powers are never truly defined. One moment he's just like using his finger to move people around. The next he's kind of just making force fields for some reason. And then he does his little anger fit and like pops open. And then that's like his move. And then one moment, this dude will use both his hand laser beams like he's a fucking Jedi. So it's just massively confusing to me to try and understand what type of threat this Kang holds. Especially like, my dude, if you can just use your finger to flick Cassie, Modoc, Scott all in the jail cell, why are you having problems with anybody in this movie? By your own logic, you should just be able to like flap your hands and push everyone and everything to the side. But I feel like once they realized that they did that, they realized the problem in it and had to reel it back a little bit to the point where it just makes his power set kind of confusing and undermines him as a villain because it doesn't make him as threatening as I think they could make him be.
Yeah, I agree. And I just pulled this up. This is Wikipedia, so y'all take this with a grain of salt. But his abilities are genius level intellect, skilled tactician, access to advanced technology, highly advanced battle armor that grants superhuman strength, speed, and stamina, the ability to time travel, force field projections, and the ability to control other forms of technology. So we saw a bit of that, but I do agree with what you're saying. It feels like, and I saw a lot of Star Wars comparisons when I was
Yeah.
going into the movie, and I was like, I don't know where they're getting that from. But then after a certain point, I was like, all right, he's done the force choke, he's done the whole thing to the side. All he needs is a lightsaber and a mask, and he's like, he's Darth Vader. Like the similarities are pretty eerie. And one thing I forgot to note in my spoiler-free review was that there's a lot of Star Wars like influence in here. If and I hope I'm not the only one that picked up on that.
No, no, I definitely get it. I understand it because just like you, when I was going into this, I saw people saying the same thing, and I'm like, dude, what a Star Wars integrated MCU film. This has got to be wild. But I really feel like no matter how much influence they took from Star Wars, I don't really think they did anything with it or anything of interest, I'll say.
I all that I was thinking of was like when the hologram popped up, I was thinking to myself, next thing you know, Kang's going to say execute order 66. Like what are we doing here?
I would have fucking shit myself if that happened. I would have that probably would have been the only time I'd laugh in the movie.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about the humor in a second, how I thought it was hit or miss,
Yeah.
but the misses are definitely misses. But it's strange going a bit to the end credits scene where we see the other variants of Kang, like the Pharaoh one and just the other ones saying like, all right, we've all gathered and we're now just going full bore. And I don't know. What was your reaction to that?
So I was kind of just left stumped on my ass a little bit because we've been introduced to two different Kangs and they've treated them in the same respect. They both die. And I'm putting that in quotations because I don't think this Kang actually died, but they do the same thing. He makes a threat that if you do something to me, something worse will happen. That's exactly what we see in Loki with He Who Remains, who keeps the sacred timeline sacred. Sylvie kills him. That's what breaks the timeline, the sacred timeline. Then we get in this movie, if you kill me or don't let me out, worse versions of me will come. And it makes me sit there and it kind of wraps back into why I don't feel like him as a villain was as threatening because ultimately the Kang they set up is he's killed a lot of Avengers, he's killed multiple, he's kind of lost track at which ones he has killed. That's how many this version of Kang has killed. We see him erase timelines, so we know what this character is capable of. What's supposed to make me scared for any of the other Kangs, because in my eye destroying a timeline seems like the worst of the worst. I don't know how anything can feel as monumental as erasing an entire timeline to the point where I'm like, okay, these characters are cool looking, but how are you going to differentiate them enough from someone who hasn't read who hasn't read the comics, who doesn't really understand who this character is? How are you going to convince me that this is the next Thanos level threat when you've made this Kang look like a wimp when he fights Ant-Man?
Yeah, and definitely just there's I don't know if you picked up on that, the scene where Michelle Pfeiffer's character Janet Van Dyne was basically level laying out Kang's entire plan of erasing the timelines and stuff. When I was like, talk about show don't or tell don't show over here.
Yeah, I was kind of mad about that because I feel like the things they tell us is the things they should have shown us, and the things they show us is the things they should have just told us. and it goes to the flashback with Janet and Kang. That could have just been wrapped up in a little summary while they were walking, but I'd much have rather see Kang actually kill Avengers and seem threatening. And you never get that. You just hear him say it and you never see it, which makes you like, he could just be faking this to seem more menacing. Yeah, he seems menacing because he can flick people, but he never does that anymore outside of the jail scene. So ultimately, I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about him going up against not only just Ant-Man and the Wasp, but every Avenger that we've met through phases 1 through 3 and phase 4. Because I don't believe, for as we stand right now, not knowing anything outside of Kang probably coming back in Loki season 2, I just I just don't understand how they're gonna make him threatening. It's kind of mind boggling.
I definitely see where you're coming from. And one thing that I just thought of, we were talking about Janet Van Dyne, that scene where she's telling about how she met Kang in the whole spaceship one, and when she touches his ship because it's connected to him neurally, and you see the flashback, you were talking about how the whole show don't tell kind of thing. An effective use of a flashback in the MCU, the often derided Avengers Age of Ultron, which I defend on a regular basis, the whole flashback where Scarlet Witch bewitches Tony's mind to where he sees all of the Chitauri ships flying through, and the Captain America just saying, "You could have stopped this." That was an effective, like, okay, maybe not have been a flashback, but it was definitely an effective moment to where that
So, yeah.
basically occupies Tony Stark's whole worldview for the remainder of the character's history. Put a suit of armor around the world. That was an effective use of a flashback. This just feels like showing what Kang has done instead of or telling what Kang has done rather than showing it.
Yeah. No, I'm absolutely in agreement to the point where I'm sitting here, I'm like, cool. I don't know if I signed up for a Kang film or Kang sides. I don't, that's where I'm really torn with this movie is it doesn't want to be an Ant-Man movie because it's trying to add so much Kang, but they add so much Kang that it doesn't ever feel like an Ant-Man and the Wasp movie. And those two conflicting ideas left me coming out of here is just like, why didn't they just make a Kang origin 45, 50-minute special in Disney Plus? They've clearly stated that they're going to use the specials to use that as a highlight to introducing characters in the future. And it kind of just feels like they've shafted both stories because they wanted to make an Ant-Man film feel more important than I don't really think it actually is, per se.
Because both Ant-Man and Ant-Man and the Wasp both work as palate cleansing films. First Ant-Man came out literally the same year as Avengers Age of Ultron. Ant-Man and the Wasp came out the first movie after Infinity War, and that whole just the whole Thanos
Yeah.
snapping half the universe out of existence. They're fun heist movies, and that's all that they ever were destined to be. And I think there is heist elements in here, but I think overall this movie was like, all right, we need to do Endgame again, but instead of like, or Endgame or the ending to Infinity War in Wakanda, I feel like they just needed this big battle when in reality, Ant-Man has never really been a big time movie. It's always been very small. And I'm not just commenting because Ant-Man shrinks and gets bigger. I'm saying that the Ant-Man movies have always worked as being not contained, but just enough MCU to where you're like, okay, this is definitely fits in the universe, but not like so world ending to where it just blends together.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. That's pretty much my entire sentiment on it. Relatively, just because it just feels like there's so many great story ideas. They have all the pieces. They just had no clue how to put them because I think I don't remember if it's the first or second main trailer. It might be both, but I totally think they sell you on a different concept in those trailers from the way they structure it to a point where I'm like, I'd rather see the story that the trailers just sold me on, where Kang is using the thought of getting back the time that Scott has lost due to the snap and falling into the quantum realm to be with Cassie for those 5 years that he never had. And that's what I thought going into this. And he had to do a heist to get something for Kang to help him escape. And well, relatively, yeah, that's in the movie, but it's only like 25 minutes. And his main testimony for making Scott doing it is, if you won't do it to get time back, I'll just kill her. They fall right into the stereotypical, I'm going to kill someone you care about trope that I'm just like, come on, guys, really? 31 films in, and we're still falling back on the generic trope of I'll just kill your family member. And it doesn't work as well either in that front because you've already done it with Cassie in the first one.
Not
So
not to mention that the whole reason this movie kind of happens is that Janet Van Dyne just didn't tell anyone about her time in the quantum realm.
yeah, that
And I
was a
was
whole nother
literally
issue.
yelling at the screen, like, talk to someone,
It,
literally anyone. And I
dude,
get it. It was a very
yeah,
traumatic time in her life, but there were several moments where it's like, oh, it's implied that she and Bill Murray were a thing, and we will get to that. Don't you worry. It's like she was a freedom fighter, but it's just told to us. So
yeah.
it's frustrating.
No, I absolutely agree. And it goes back to like how they structure this movie. I really don't think they knew how to structure it. The editing's not that great. And the whole Janet thing, the film's 2 hours long and she tells him an hour in. It takes an hour for her just to say Kang is here, just because they want to keep building up as this looming threat that ultimately this film didn't need to set him up as a looming threat because we already had Loki to do that. So if we know that he's a part of this film coming in, they don't need to set him up as this big bad that we already understand that he is. So it feels like a bunch of wasted time doing nothing and going nowhere and learning nothing new outside. Janet was a freedom fighter. Janet hooked up with another dude. Like, okay, cool. I'll be honest, this is an Ant-Man Quantumania film. I don't really give a shit about any of that.
Definitely. I think this is as good a place as any to talk about the constant plague that has become the sense of humor in the MCU, which is
Uh,
in certain cases about as funny as stubbing your toe. This is let me just say that this is nowhere near as cringy as Thor Love and Thunder with the whole axe and the hammer trying to compete for Thor's love, I guess. It's
that was
nowhere near as
funny.
bad. It
That was funny. Dude. Come on.
No, it wasn't. But well, that's another conversation for another time. But this is nowhere near as cringy as Thor and Love and Thunder, but even still, anything involving MODOK, I wanted him off of my screen. Like when I first I'm like, oh no, they're not gonna do Darren Cross. And sure enough, Darren's big old face shows up, and it's so bad. Peyton Reed, of all the things you could pull inspiration from, The Adventures of Shark Boy and Lava Girl was apparently a thing that you decided to do. Oh my god, it's so bad.
Dude, I can't even talk about MODOK anymore because of how much it makes me just laugh at the film itself. I've seen the movie twice now, and each time in the theater, his reveal of the mask coming off and just showing his elongated face, you hear just like the most cringiest laugh from the audience, like, oh, like, and I'm just like, yeah, guys, I'm sure they wanted you to laugh, just like not in this way. So, did they really accomplish the one thing that they did? Because my God, I'm not the person that shits on the visual effects of this movie, but this is the one thing that I truly think they just they had no clue what they were doing with. They're like, between his look and his characterization, just like massively, what the fuck are you guys doing?
Not to mention that it makes it even worse because when you don't see Darren's face and it's just the MODOK like mask,
It's cool.
it is a very cool design. But when but when you see Darren in just the stretched out suit, you're just like, this studio is worth billions, and that got the thumbs up.
Yeah.
Not to mention, not to mention when you hear about his origins and how Kang formed him, I don't know if you caught this, but you can literally see Modoc's.
Ass cheeks. I know. I know, dude. Every time I've seen that scene so far, that's all I look at. Like his two little baby tushies. I'm just sitting here like, man, guys, you really tried to take inspiration from Star Wars Episode 3, but showed the one part no one wanted to look at. Like,
Oh my God. And then like they keep bringing up the fact that his legs are so small. I'm just sitting there like, get this man some creatine and get him in the gym for a couple leg days. That'll
dude,
help.
when Scott was like, only just noticed the baby legs. She's like, they're not baby legs. Like, it's not a good line by any means, but it's just so ridiculous that it's just kind of funny that we're in this quantum realm and we're having an argument about this guy's baby legs. Like, what?
Yeah, and just the quantum realm people are just they're very weird for me because you have the leader, I can't think of her name, but I did like her. I think she did fine. You got the dude whose head is a literal cannon, like a laser cannon, and
Yeah.
there are several times where he's tied up, and I was just like, your head is a cannon. How are you
Bro.
struggling? How are you struggling right now? You got
Dude,
the gummy bear with like the arms and the legs with the joke
yes,
about
Zev.
holes, which was just I wanted to walk off the planet during it was so
Dude,
bad.
the I wish I could see what everyone else saw when it comes to this character, because the holes jokes were just like some of the worst fucking writing I have seen, especially at the end when he finally gets the holes. My guy, I don't think I've ever seen someone so happy about having holes in my life, to a point where I'm just like, dude, what? He takes all of his holes and then forms it into a mouth, and then he just sucks everyone up. I'm like, okay, Kirby, let's chill.
I was gonna say, like, my dude, just watch the movie Holes with Shia LaBeouf and you'll be fine. Oh my God. But then like I said, the just the quantum realm, the people there, I don't know how to feel. I mean, I like the dude who could read the minds. I thought he had a couple moments where I was like, okay, I like him in that. But I don't know how to feel. I don't think that their addition was entirely necessary.
It feels like a lot of the aspects of the quantum realm were in this film to kind of give background to Janet's time here without actually ever telling us what she did down here, other than she killed people, she almost helped Kang escape, and she did a few bad things, which, let's be honest, is anyone fucking shocked about? Like, you're stuck in this fucking weird realm, and you think people are going to give you a bunch of smack? Like, I'm sitting back, I'm like, okay, but let's be real, everyone up in the real world would totally understand where you're coming from. There's no reason why they would give you shit for trying to survive, not knowing if you'd ever come back to the real world. That's it just stumps me.
Yeah, and their whole anger towards Janet and and Scott and Cassie just felt completely out of nowhere. They have never met these people. They're Scott and Cassie are in the quantum realm for the first time. So and they just is I don't know, it felt completely out of nowhere. It felt contrived. It really did.
Yeah, I mean, they try to make. I'm sure we'll get Cassie into Cassie later, but just to like touch on Cassie a little bit with her relationship with like the quantum realm and all these characters, is they try so hard to make Cassie this understanding youth that just wants to help and save everybody. But I think Cassie as a character is fundamentally flawed simply because she is every other young character the MCU has introduced at this point outside of Miss Marvel. And I think that's why people are holding on to Miss Marvel a lot more than, let's say, Riri Williams. Because with Riri, she's just a smart teen. That's what Shuri was in the first Black Panther. So we're just passing on the roles now. No kid is unique or different because they're all super caring. They're all the Peter Parker characteristics. They're all super caring. They don't want to cause harm to anyone unless they have to, like end of the world cases. And they're just insanely smart. Like, no way do I believe for a second in those 5 years, Cassie learned how to navigate the fucking quantum realm or build a device to help map out the quantum realm. Without one, she's never been down there. And two, she's never touched this technology in her life. And three, the people that do know this technology weren't even alive. And Scott was stuck in the quantum realm. So I'm just like, you guys are really trying hard to make us like this character.
Yeah, in
And
the words
they
of the
failed.
great philosophers Lincoln Park, they tried so hard, they got so far, but in the end, it didn't even matter. And it just, like you said, I like this actress. I like the
I do
moments she
too.
had with her dad, but it felt very put on, especially with like, the whole jail scene. It is like, up, chip off the old block, and I'm just like, really? It's like yes, we get it. You care about the homeless. I worked at a homeless shelter for a year and a half, true story. So I do care. But it just felt like you said, it felt like the insert caring teenager here. Like it's becoming a bit of an archetype at this point.
No, yeah, it really is. And I think it only adds that outside of her being this super generic archetype that the MCU keeps reusing for these younger characters, they her as a character doesn't go through any type of journey. She starts out the film already having a suit, and she doesn't learn how to use the suit. They try to make this thing where Scott's teaching her how to throw a punch where it's just like go small, jump, and then thrust. She's failed it 3 times, and she doesn't. You don't feel any progress of her character, and you don't feel any progress of her relationship with Scott outside of a few cute moments, because relatively this movie just does what, or gives Scott the same reasoning that the last two movies does. Everything's for Cassie. Yeah, I get it, bro. You love your fucking daughter. But can we give Scott a character trait outside of just doing everything for his daughter?
Yeah, not to mention there's the scene where uh she becomes giant size and
Yeah.
it feels like it doesn't really feel like a bit of a lucky break. And when that happened, I was like, I remember it was a whole big thing of Scott trying to do that in Captain America Civil War. And when it happened, it didn't last long, but it was very successful. And afterwards it like he was on the ground being like, can someone get me an orange? Like it took it out of him.
Yeah.
It just felt like is like, oh, she can do it now. Oh, okay. All right
Yeah,
then.
because she's young and youthful, bro. You didn't know that? Like, like these,
No, it
it's
wasn't told to me about a dozen times in the movie, but anyway, but yeah, it's like and I like I said, I like this actress. I hope this character does come back, but overall, I just felt like it was very much she was like they were checking boxes instead of making her and I didn't want it to her to be bitter because her dad left. I'm glad they didn't do that. And because I mean he was stuck somewhere in the quantum realm himself, so it wasn't like he went for a pack of smokes and never came back. I'm glad they didn't do the bitter route, but at the same time, this wasn't particularly great either. So I it's like it's frustrating.
because you never understand who the Cassie character is. They never give you time to see where she's coming from or where she came from. Like, I think this is just outside of Quantum Mania's problem and more of a Marvel after Endgame problem. I never think they ever maximized on the blip and what type of ramifications it ever had, because they reference the blip once, and it's not even to regard as Cassie's time outside of she learned how to access the quantum realm and build a map. And I'm just like, so what are we doing with this character? She doesn't seem to be affected by the blip. She says that she missed him, but the actress that they casted in Endgame gave a much more convincing performance in that movie than I think Catherine Newton did in anything in this film, which is a red flag for me.
That whole little scene where Scott gets out of the quantum realm and discovers everything that happened in the memorial, and then he runs home and sees Cassie 5 years older, and that whole moment, and she's like, not she, but he is like, "You're so big." It's like it's such a good moment, and like you said, it was handled so well, and I feel like just put it through the cartoon-o-matic in Quantumania.
Yeah, and I've been seeing like a lot of the comparisons between this and Thor Love and Thunder. The one thing I will give Love and Thunder over this film in terms of the writing and acting is they made you care about Gore in some regard. The middle of the film's whatever because he doesn't show up too often. But the beginning and the ending, it's truly heartbreaking. Watching him go through the devastation of losing his daughter and then allowing himself to die, realizing that his newfound daughter would be better off in the hands of Thor and him accepting that. I'm not a father, but it sure has made me fucking almost tear up. And you've never even met that daughter before until this film. And we've known Cassie since 2014. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, wow, you guys made me sit down in both these films, watch two father daughter stories. One of them was only introduced in the film when it came out a year ago, almost at this point. And one's been developed over the course of 14, not 14 years, since 2014. So 7 years at this point. One of them made me care a lot more than the other one did. And I didn't care about the Cassie story in this because they absolutely fumbled in that regard.
Yeah, and I think there's a good place as any to pivot into talking about the rest of the Ant family.
Yeah.
We've touched on Janet Van Dyne, and I think we'll touch more on her in just a minute. But what did you think? I think the Wasp was kind of, I don't want to say she was wasted, but I
She
feel
was
like,
wasted.
oh,
Uh,
you do believe.
I firmly believe she was wasted. I literally would call this movie Ant-Man and the Plot Convenience, Quantumania, because Plot Convenience has more of a role in this film than the Wasp does. She just sits there, walks around, shoots her blasters once or twice, and that's it. She adds nothing of value to the story to the point where Scott's more worried about his daughter than reconnecting with any of the Pims. And I'm like, okay, she's worried about finding Scott. He's not worried about them. And I'm sitting here like, aren't you guys supposed to be in love with each other? But that's just me.
They share like two scenes together. They go to some Oscar type premiere, or not an Oscar, but it's like a thing for Pim Van Dyne charity organizations, and then they have a scene where they eat Chinese on the Golden Gate Bridge.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Yeah. And then they have that one little head touch moment at the end where, may I add, going back to my title, Ant-Man and the Plot Convenience, tell me how fucking convenient of the story to be her shooting her gauntlet through a portal she can't see and hitting Kang perfectly in the chest. I'm sitting there like, dude, I can let things fly, but when you're literally preventing the story from moving forward because you guys have made this character too powerful for just Ant-Man, I'm like, come on now. What? You're putting him down with a blaster and a few punches, and it's not like it's Thor beating the shit out of him or Captain America. I'm not saying my guy's a wimp, but Jonathan Majors, outside of his Kang form, the dude is ripped. And I don't believe for a day in anyone's week that he would lose to Ant-Man or Scott Lang in any regard.
Yeah, I've lost some weight, but every time I see Jonathan Majors in like the Creed trailers or just anything shirtless, I'm just like, I got a long way to go.
You're just like, fuck.
I got more work to do. But yeah, it's thoroughly confusing. Like it just yeah, it's just whole thing is just weird. But touching like I think another one to add to kind of the wasted pile is Hank Pym, if we're
Yep.
really thinking about it. because he brings in the big ants, the smart ants, but that's about it. And literally, his big gag is reacting to Janet and the Bill Murray character being F buddies in the quantum realm, and two driving the ship with the pool noodles, like because they look like pool noodles to me. I'm sorry, they just do. That's literally his entire role in this. I'm like, this is Michael Douglas. This is like the game. This is like other things.
Yeah.
Like he's definitely earned his ability to be like, all right, I'm on the back nine. I think I'm just gonna be in the paycheck phase. He's more than earned that. At the same
Oh
time,
yeah.
it's like, why is he here?
See, I think Hank Pym is a perfect example of throwing a character into this film and knowing nothing to do with him, not having a single fucking clue. I've started proposing this plot that I think. Now I'm not saying I could write better. I'm just saying out of the pieces that they've given us, it feels like it would have made more sense to have Hank and Janet still in the real world while it's Hope, Scott, and oh my god, Cassie in the quantum realm that gets stuck. Because then I feel like them paying off why she's so mysterious or why these characters outside of Janet don't know who Kang is because Janet would only tell Hank that because he's the only one there and they have to rush to figure out how to get them back before they run into Kang because she understands that once they get there, she knows that they realize or Kang realizes that those three are down there. And I think if it would have made the stakes a much more apparent than having them all down there, Janet Van Dyne just like holding it back because she doesn't want to tell what she's done, which ultimately I don't understand why you have to say what you've done instead of just saying, I met this guy down here, or just simply lie to them. It doesn't matter because Kang tells them what she does anyway at some point. So it just feels like they had all the right pieces. They just didn't know what to do with them. And I think if they did keep Hank and Janet in the outside our world, it would have allowed for like Luis and that crew to come back. It like have them try to fix a machine because we've already seen them work together in the past two films. I don't see why they wouldn't be incorporated in trying to fix this device and try to get Scott out with his family. Yeah, I'm just like, it seems like they made this movie centered around Kang and then made the Ant-Man aspects work around the Kang stuff, knowing it's going to be an Ant-Man movie. Like you're doing everything kind of not even backwards, just tangled up. Like
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback off of that, I feel like, and this is my theory, I feel like like Feige and all of them were like, all right, we got to get Kang reintroduced like into the mainline movies. What's the first movie up? Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Book him and be like, uh,
yeah.
all right, because it was the first MCU movie of 2023, like the first mainline one. So is like just put him in there. Even though
Yeah.
like we first met Thanos at the end of the first Avengers, and it wasn't even a scene, it was a glorified cameo. He was looking at the earth, and then he just like turned around to be like, uh-oh. So it was brief, but it was like it was impactful.
I mean, if we're, I mean, the only way to really compare Kang is to obviously Thanos, which I'm not a big comparison person, but you need to in this regard because Marvel has stated, or Kevin Feige has stated that this is the next Thanos level threat. So if we look back at Thanos' time, he had a cameo at the event at the end of Avengers, which sets the stage so well because he's in these shadows and he smirks after Loki had just lost invading the planet, which already brings him up like you can see in his face that he knows he can do better. Set the stakes there. You don't see him for another 4 years until 2 years, sorry, until Guardians of the Galaxy, and he has more of a prominent role in this. You finally see who he is, but he's still a glorified cameo pretty much. He has two scenes and he undermines the main villain of that movie, which I think James Gunn just did really well because it not only shows you that Ronan's scary in terms of this solo movie's villain, but there's a person above him that makes him look like a little bitch. And that's ultimately what really makes him scary. And then you don't see him again until next year in Avengers Age of Ultron, where he grabs the Infinity Gauntlet and says, I'll just do this myself. And then boom, you do not see him for until 3 years later.
Yeah,
Like,
the
short and
pacing
simple.
of the reveal of the sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
No, no,
off.
no. I was done. You're all good.
The pacing of the reveal of Thanos was so well done in hindsight. I remember at the time in like forums of people be like, why don't they just reveal Thanos now? And like, that's not the point. They're building him up to when we finally do see him at the end of Thor Ragnarok in that big ship with the rest of Asgard. You're like, okay, now we're in trouble. And then
Yeah.
Infinity War and Endgame. So all of that, it was very much a kind of like a roller coaster, like uphill, and then you get to the peak, and then it's all downhill from there, literally. So for Feige to say Kang is the next Thanos or the next Thanos level villain, that was probably a bad choice of words, especially how they portray him here.
Yeah. Cause like just think about Avengers Infinity War. Dude, the opening scene is so fucking chilling. To I remember watching that for the first time at an 11 p.m. screening on Thursday night for that movie. And dude, just finally being in awe that we finally got to Thanos. He's here. He has not come to play. The first 10 to 15 minutes is him beating the shit out of Hulk, killing Loki, killing half of Asgard on the ship and blowing up the ship to the point where he leaves Thor adrift in space until he hits the Guardians by coincidence. Dude, that is a great setup to who this character is outside of the first three films that he was in these glorified cameos. But instead, they just kind of move past all that. They don't show us Kang harming any Avengers, not killing, not beating the shit out of. He just says it. He's just like, I'm the big bad now, so you should fear me. And you never feel that outside of Jonathan Majors having a kick-ass performance because he's just a great actor.
And then when they show Thanos literally causing destruction, it's that flashback to baby Gamora where
Yeah.
where he takes her from her home planet and he shows him the knife of perfectly balanced as all things should be, while half of the planet is getting completely just mowed down by blasters. It's so much more effective.
I mean, even his first line in the movie, run from it, it all ends the same. With me, like, dude, that was such a haunting line for him to open up with in the beginning of the film. Like, holy shit, dude, you did not come to play. You are here to, no wordplay here, but to conquer. Because right now Kang the Conqueror just doesn't feel like someone who's going to conquer anything.
Yeah, without a doubt. I feel like this character is going to definitely need some TLC going forward, but I feel like Jonathan Majors is the guy to do.
Yeah.
He just needs better writing. That's all that I will say.
Dude, I fucking cross my fingers for that because right now Marvel's just hit or miss. Like, either some really good writing or just throw it at a fucking wall and hope it sticks. And
Exactly. And
yeah,
Feige has been on record saying he wants it to continue for like years and years and years. That's all well and good, but it's like the first three phases are like, and there were subpar MCU movies in phases one,
yeah,
two, and three. Let's not get that twisted. But when it hit hard. But like phase four, and there are defenders of phase four, and they are more than entitled to their opinion. I'm not trying to be like, oh, you're wrong for liking that. I'm not trying to be that guy. Phase four was the most inconsistent phase of the MCU thus far. High highs, Spider-Man No Way Home, Shang-Chi.
yep.
I'm sure you can think of a couple of things. Then low lows, like Thor Love and Thunder, She-Hulk with the whole Megan Thee Stallion,
Oh
whatever that
God.
whole thing was. But it was definitely a case of Everest, Marianas Trench, and almost no in between.
No, I absolutely agree. I mean, I think they had a killer start to phase four too, coming out of the gate with everything going on with WandaVision. Everybody loved that show. And I still love it. I still consider it the best Disney Plus TV show out of all the ones that they've put on so far. Loki was great as well. It feels like everything that started in phase four outside of Black Widow was seeming to head on the right track. And then after No Way Home in 2021, all of 2022 just kind of kept hitting these curbs and couldn't get back straight on the road. And it was just like Moon Knight wasn't terrible, but you don't see anyone talking about that show anymore. And the same goes for She-Hulk, goes for What If, it goes for Multiverse of Madness, which, let's be real, that movie should have broke $1 billion with the plot that they were promising. And it didn't. It had all the right pieces. Sam Raimi, the multiverse, Benedict Cumberbatch, like everything was in play for this movie, and it couldn't even reach the 1 billion. I mean, fuck, it had the first movie role in the MCU of Reed Richards, the one character people have been asking for since day one of in the MCU, and they somehow managed to flop it because they listened to Twitter fans. Like, come on, Marvel,
Yeah,
you know, we everyone knows you're better than that. Like,
Mr. Fantastic was turned into Silly String.
I he felt like silly string before that at least. So
Oh,
it's just really frustrating to
yeah.
see the path that they've been going down. And like I think that they've just sold Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. I don't want to say in the total wrong way, but just like not in the way that this movie plays to be. It's not an event that this next Avengers level threat movie because it doesn't feel like that. The stakes are never there.
Yeah, and it's been kind of rough news because as of this video, it was
Oh yeah.
announced that the Marvels got pushed back, which wasn't a humongous fan of Captain Marvel, and I have not seen Miss Marvel. I've heard good things, but it does kind of suck that they had to move it. But then again, I believe it was on the same weekend as Mission Impossible and what else? I can't think of it.
Shit. A Barbie, Oppenheimer. Those are all like the week
Oh yeah,
before.
so that was
But
probably the smartest move they could have done.
is it though? They chose a really bad time to put the movie too. I mean, the movie is sandwiched in between the next Hunger Games movie and the week before that. I'm trying to remember. There's another big movie coming out the week before this one's supposed to come out. And oh my god, why am I flaking on it? It's
Hang
gonna
on,
bother
I'm
me.
I'm looking at IMDb right now.
Yeah, because like guys, you have September and October. Throw it in October. Give yourself some time to grow this film because not a lot of people were hot on the Captain Marvel movie. And I feel like a lot of people are gonna see the Captain Marvel simply because of Miss Marvel and how that show did on Disney Plus.
Yeah, it's that particular weekend though is going to be very loaded indeed. Hang on, I will find it. Oh wait, a little movie called Dune Part 2 is coming out
That's
the
it.
week
Dune
before.
Part Two. I can't believe I couldn't remember that. Yeah, dude, that's gonna now that we're not in the COVID era, I think Dune Part Two is gonna fucking blow up.
Yes, exactly. With especially considering you got Austin Butler, who is just coming off of a potential Oscar win
Yep.
and winning literally everything else. He's involved in the cast and just he's got
You also got
momentum there.
Florence Pugh in it too. Like she's the
Yes,
hot one of the hottest actresses right now. Like two of them.
without a
It's
doubt.
crazy.
And just looking ahead for MCU films and stuff this year, we got Guardians Volume 3, which I'm excited for. I think
Hell
that
yeah.
looks really good. And then we got the Marvels, which we just talked about. But I saw the Guardians 3 trailer attached to Ant-Man and the Wasp. It's going to be sad to see James Gunn go.
I
This is his
know.
last hurrah, but I mean, the Guardians films outside of the Captain America films, I'd say are the most consistent standalone MCU films that we've gotten.
I think I might be the only defender of the Spider-Man trilogy. It's either everyone loves No Way Home, but it's either people love Homecoming but hate Far From Home, or hate Homecoming but love Far From Home. And I feel like I'm the person who just loves all three because I'm a massive Spider-Man fan. And I think it, even though the second one wasn't in New York, sure, I think it had all the qualities of what makes a great Spider-Man movie a great Spider-Man movie. And so, yeah, dude, between us, like Guardians, Spider-Man for me and Captain America have been the most consistent trilogies so far.
Yeah, I've never been overly in love with the MCU Spider-Man films. I mean, with the exception of No
Yeah.
Way Home, that movie's awesome.
Yeah.
But I liked Homecoming in bursts. I think in bursts it was excellent. And I think Far From Home gets way too much hate. I still had a great time with it. I think the Mysterio reveal was actually handled pretty well, and it set up things into No Way Home about as good as you could ever ask for. So I
Yeah.
think No Way Home is not my favorite MCU movie, but it does not deserve the hate that it gets from certain people. I see sometimes people say it's the worst superhero movie ever made
I'm
in a
like,
world in
what?
which Batman and Robin, Spawn, and Jonah Hex also exist, and Fantastic Stick.
Dude, it bothers me when I see that because I see that a lot too. Like, I'm like, guys, come on. It just feels like you're hating to hate. And I think it kind of forms into like what I kind of have issues with phase four and phase five now is I think a lot of people are just griping about the wrong criticisms to be giving Marvel nowadays. Feels like people are just kind of disconnected. Like I mentioned before, how I think the fucking CG was perfectly fine. I don't think there was anything terrible about it outside of Modoc. But come on, guys. Thor Love and Thunder was way worse visually than this. And they're still on Earth for a good portion of it. This film is trying to encapsulate a universe that we don't know about or can even ever think about what could it look like. And I think they did a really good job. And I see people saying like, oh, the visuals fucking suck. It's probably one of the worst that Marvel's done. And I'm like, okay, that's your opinion. That's fine. But I definitely got to disagree, especially with She-Hulk this last year.
Yeah, without a doubt. But I think that's a good place to put a period at the end of the sentence to the discussion. I think definitely a disappointing movie. I liked Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania on the whole, but I think it's like to quote Pedro Pascal in Wonder Woman 1984, it's good, but it could be better.
See, I think I have very different sentiments there. Simply, I found this movie boring. I don't think any of the action sequences were really too thrilling. The third act kind of just fell apart in one. It just turned into this generic, typical superhero, a bunch of shit's happening on one screen with the actors in front of it. And then they totally underpower Kang at the same time to the point where damn, this dude got snipped away by a bunch of fucking ants. Are you kidding me? Like, I get their heavily advanced technology, but like your description about Kang before was like his powers are controlling technology. My guy could have flung all of them away because they had all technology on them. So it's just like they wrote themselves into a hole and tripped over their own foot.
Yeah, totally understandable. I definitely see where you're coming from there. I think is definitely not the best start for Phase 5, that is for
No.
certain. However, Guardians 3 does look very good indeed, and best of luck to the Marvels. Hopefully
Yeah.
hopefully that one gets off in a much better direction. But now I turn it over to you guys. What did you think of Ant-Man and the Wasp? Favorite, least favorite moments? Comment your thoughts down below. We'd love to read what you have to say. Ryan, this was a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. I know your channel will be linked in the description, but anything else you got coming up?
I mean, not really, man. I'm just working my ass off right now with a bunch of like film productions going on behind the scenes. And I try to watch movies every week. So I'm like up to date with everything. And that itself is getting hard. Throwing out the podcast once a week. I'm just like, damn, I'm kind of just like, I don't have enough time in a week to do anything anymore. So, but yeah, dude, I had such a blast talking about this movie with you. It's no, regardless of how I feel about Marvel Phase 4 and 5 so far, I was iffy on Phase 4. Not a great start to Phase 5. I still love watching these movies because they just give you a form of entertainment that you never really gotten before from like 14 years ago. And yeah, some of them are starting to run a little dry, but you know what? I think Marvel is starting to head on the right track with the way they're repurposing their shows for Disney Plus, their scheduling, and I definitely think they're listening now. It's only been a year. That's what I keep trying to tell people is like, yeah, dude, they give us just that many projects in a year, but it's only been a year. These people have so many projects down the line that's gonna take some time to have those switches actually become noticeable. So I'm still hopeful for phase 5 and phase 6. Especially like I know this one's a little bit far away, but Captain America New World Order, I can't wait for that movie. But yeah, dude, Guardians 5. Oh, fuck, not 5. Guardians 3 is going to be so good. But yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, and like I said, Ryan's Twitter and his channel will be linked in the description. Go give him a follow on both of those. But as for this channel, thank you all so much for watching, and stay tuned for more videos coming. I will be concluding my Road to Creed 3 series by covering Creed 2, and then all that's left to do is to cover Creed 3 when it comes out in just about a week and a half or so. And then I will be on the road to John Wick Chapter 4 by covering all the John Wick movies, so a lot to look forward to on the channel. But if you like the video, please be sure to leave a like, comment your thoughts down below, and if you like this video and you want to see more like it, hit the subscribe button and click the bell to allow notifications. That way when a new video drops, you'll be the first to know about it. For Ryan, my name is Ryan Cam. We will see you in the next one. Take care.